Heavenly Father, we are so thankful that we can gather together this afternoon. We're so thankful for Mission Connection and all the work that so many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have put into it for us. And we ask your blessing on all of them and that you would reward them for your faithful service year after year, putting on Mission Connection. Thank you, Lord, for Kristen and for the message that you've given her. And Father, we ask that you would speak to us through her, encourage us through the message that you've given her, and that you would also encourage her, Lord, and bless her. Lord, we also pray that you'll keep your hand on the technology and ensure that that continues to work for all of us. Please, Lord, lead us and guide us in this time. We ask all these things in the precious name of our Lord Jesus. Amen. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Kristen now.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm going to spotlight myself. Wow, I just got really big. My name is Kristen Kidney, and I am the director of the TESOL program at Multnomah University. And it's so great to see all of you here today at a missions conference interested in talking about TESOL, because that's certainly where my interests lie, is in that intersecting space between teaching English as a second language and sharing Jesus with the world and with students. And it's so exciting to be in a Zoom room with all of you who are in some way connected to those interests as well. So thanks for coming, and we're going to get started here. So let me tell you a little bit about my story, because I'm a big proponent of you have to know who you teach before you can know what to teach. And I'm usually in a room with you and I ask you these questions and poll you and hear your story. I'm not going to do that today because of the uniqueness of Zoom, but if you would love to share your TESOL story with me at some point, send me an email. My contact information is going to be at the end of the presentation, and let's do a Zoom coffee or an in-person coffee, and let me hear your story too. My story goes a little bit like this. I share it because a lot of people have a very similar TESOL story. That is, that they find it quite by accident, or seemingly by accident. So I had studied some Japanese throughout my life, and I have I took a job after college with a missions organization in Japan, and honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. What do missionaries do? I mean, it's this sort of ambiguous, vague job description. So I went into, sorry, I'm like reading the chat. I'm going to focus on my story. I went into Japan with a missions organization that had lots of different job openings available, all kinds of different things that you could sign up to do, but pretty much all of them included teaching English as some part of the job description. And I didn't know what I wanted to do as a missionary. I just knew I did not want to teach English because it sounded hard, it sounded complicated, and if I'm being completely honest, it also sounded really boring. I did not want to go all the way, halfway around the world, just to go explain be verbs and hold up flashcards. This was not my idea of missions at all. So I took the job. There was one job description that didn't include teaching English, and that sounded fantastic. I didn't care what the rest of it said. I just signed up for that, and I got hired. So off I go to Japan. I arrive on a Tuesday, really, really jet lagged. I find out that my first English class is going to be Friday. I'm from the South, so I'm just going to let out a big y'all. Y'all, they gave me an English class on Friday. I wasn't even over jet lag yet. My first assignment was an English class, and it gets better. It was 3 and 4-year-olds in my class. Preschoolers who don't even know Japanese that well yet. I'm going to teach them English, and it gets worse. Their moms were going to line the classroom and watch me teach. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how to teach English to 3 and 4-year-olds, and I'm going to be watched, and I felt like judged by a whole room full of moms. Well, I survived that, apparently. And in my 2 years in Japan, I actually fell in love with it. Not just the 3 and 4-year-olds, although I definitely fell in love with them. I fell in love with teaching English as mission. And here's why. The big secret is that in an English class, you talk to people and they come back and they talk to you again and again and again and again and again. And you get to build relationships before class and after class. They come and hang out with you and talk to you, and they just want to talk about their hopes and their dreams and their frustrations and their problems, and not just the 3 and 4-year-olds, but all the way up. We taught every age group, and it was ministry. The secret is that it was a relationship builder in class and out of class that gave me a reason to be in busy people's lives. And the world is full of busy people who need a reason to know you. And when I told people I'm a missionary, they didn't know what to think about me. But when I told people I'm an English teacher, they said, "Oh, can I come to your class? When's class? I have a neighbor who wants to study too. Can we both come?" And it was this way of just spreading my net wide and seeing who could come in and be brought in to relationship, and then establish trust with them, and then share gospel with them. And so what I found was that all the other things my missions team tried, none of them were as effective as teaching English. Now, I did not fall in love with English. So if you're in here thinking, I don't know if I love grammar enough to be able to teach English, that's okay. I don't love grammar either, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So you don't have to love grammar to teach English. You have to love students. And then that propels you to go find out all the nitty-gritty things about grammar and the nitty-gritty things about linguistics and all the things about culture and language and pedagogy and assessment and all the messy details of stuff. The laundry list of being a teacher becomes easy when you're doing it for somebody that you really love. And that's what I find about teaching English as multicultural servanthood. And that's our topic for today. So I'm going to stop being huge now and actually share screen with you and talk to you today about this English teaching as multicultural servanthood. So if you're on Zoom and you're new to Zoom, you might want to go up to the top. I'm pointing the wrong way. Go up to the top where there's a teeny tiny button that says view. And you might want to click on side-by-side mode, because that way you can see me and my slides at the same time. And I don't know, you don't have to do it that way, but I do gesture a lot, and it's part of being an English teacher. We use a lot of mime. So if you want to click view, this teeny tiny button, and just click side-by-side, then you'll be able to see people in the room. You'll be able to see me as well as my slides at the same time. And sometimes that's helpful. So let's start with vocabulary, because I am a language teacher and that's where I start. The professor in me is totally coming out here as we start with just defining our terms. So the topic I'm talking to you about today is teaching English as multicultural servanthood. And it just seems to make sense to start by talking about, what do I mean when I use the phrase multicultural servanthood? And so I'm going to separate the threads of this term and look at each word specifically, and then we'll weave those back together and define the whole term, multicultural servanthood. So the first morphological piece, oh, that was a big word, of this phrase is multi. And I particularly prefer multi over cross when I'm talking about English teaching ministry, because cross implies I go to one culture and maybe leave the other one at home. And that's not what really happens for an English language teacher, because we're representing English culture a little bit as we teach language. So we're looking at it multi. Multicultural is saying it's more than one. I'm adding, not erasing, not supplanting, and not simply crossing back and forth. I'm adding culture for my students, and I'm adding culture to me. But I don't want to erase their culture. I don't want to plow over their culture. I want to add something. And that's a really important distinction. And then if we're talking about adding, let's talk about culture. That's what we're adding. Culture has a lot of different definitions. And as a professor, I'm sorry, I'm such a nerd. I couldn't pick my favorite definition. I narrowed it down to 2 for you, and it's still like way too much text to put on a PowerPoint screen. This is bad practice. Don't ever do this. Do as I say, not as I do. But I did something to be really helpful, okay? I took all the things that culture is, and I made it blue. And then I took all the things that culture does, and I made it red. And that's kind of the main thing I want to highlight here when we're talking about culture, is that culture is and culture does. I'll say that again because it's cool. So culture is and culture does. Let's look at what culture is exactly here. It is ideas, it's practices, it's experiences, it's beliefs and norms and attitudes. It's a blueprint. Ooh, metaphor there. It's community, family life, expectations. Ooh, we're going to come back to that one again. And responsibility. It's all of those things at once. And it does things, right? It's shared by a group, and it guides behaviors of that group. It explains the world. It can solve problems. It can also cause problems, maybe. It guides behavior. It makes us sensitive to matters of status, helps us know what others expect of us. Look at that. Expectation came up on both lists of what culture is and what culture does. There are a lot of expectations in culture. One of the ways that you know that you're in another culture other than your own is when you don't know what to expect, or you're not sure what's expected of you. I think for English students, sometimes that's their feeling. For English teachers, sometimes that's our feeling. We're not sure what it is our students are expecting of us. And that's an important piece to just be aware of. Okay, so we have multi, we're adding, and culture, which is and does. Now we're moving into servant. And I'm not going to define servant, but I want you to think out loud. I can't hear you because you're muted, so go ahead and think out loud. It's a great way to think. Think out loud. What comes to mind when you think of servant? What are some of the concepts here? What are some of the images that come to mind with servant? Take a minute and say it to yourself or to someone else in the room. And let me explain that I'm not trying to comprehensively define servant because it's a very conceptual kind of word. I just want to highlight some of the characteristics, some of the concepts behind servant. So some of the characteristics that come to mind for me, and maybe these are some of the things that you said, it's humble readiness. A good servant is humble, and a good servant is always ready. A good servant is aware of whom one serves. Now, let me unpack that one a little bit for teachers in the room. I'm aware there may be some people in the room who are teachers and who have been teachers or who will be teachers. This is an important point to just pause on. Aware of whom one serves. As teachers, there's a really high burnout rate for us in our profession. I've been teaching for 20 years and I've seen it. I've seen teachers who are completely passionate about serving, completely passionate about doing a great job and being professional and getting it all done, and they loved what they did and the people that they worked with, but they felt those expectations from students, the families behind those students, sometimes with children, that's parents or extended family, administrators, test designers, curriculum facilitators. It can feel like a lot of pressure coming from a lot of different places on your shoulders when you're a teacher. How do you make it through that as a servant who feels like you're serving lots of different directions? I think there's something about that in the Bible about a servant with more than one master, right? It doesn't work out too well for that servant. What we want to do as teachers is to remember the one whom we are serving. and be aware of that one. Yeah? As a teacher, you serve one. You serve God, and His expectations for you are completely reasonable. Even in a season like COVID, where you're rewiring everything you've ever done, it's so good to remember as a servant that you are serving one, and His expectations for you are full of grace and full of reasonableness. Okay, so we have multicultural servant. The next word in our vocab lesson is hood. And this one, I'll admit, it might not really be missions conference worthy, but I'm a linguist, so I can't just leave it out. I have to share with you hood as well. So I am the director of the Masters of TESOL program here at Multnomah. We also have certificate programs and undergrad programs and community-based programs too. But in our master's program, one of the things I get to do at graduation is to put the hood on our graduates. It's this sort of cape-like thing that they wear on top of their graduation regalia that says that they have earned their master's degree. It kind of makes them a superhero, I think. And it's this acknowledgement that they've been through everything I've put them through. Sort of. So the hood is what shows that they are now part of the TESOL profession. And a long time ago, professors actually wore their graduation regalia when they taught and lectured. And to wear a hood that you had not earned is where we get the word falsehood from. Okay, so there's your takeaway fact for the day. Go wow your friends with what you know about the word falsehood. Etymology lesson. We get the word falsehood from that. It is to profess something you don't have the credentials to profess. And it's also this word, this affix that sort of connotates a way of life, what you profess. And so this actually does kind of fit nicely here. It's a suffix that denotes a group or a class of persons, like knighthood or priesthood. And what it represents is a way of life. So that actually goes with servant really, really nicely. So we've spun our four threads apart and looked at each one. Let's weave them back together so that we have this comprehensive view of what it is I mean when I say multicultural servanthood. And then we're going to connect that to teaching English. So definition, here we go. What is multicultural servanthood? It is adding and expanding one's own ideas, norms, behaviors, and expectations with humble readiness and awareness of the nature and desires of the one being served as an integral part of one's way of life. That feels good. Like just saying it that way feels good. This is multicultural servanthood. Now, it's messy. It's not clean and neat. It is a messy thing, but so is English. So this actually dovetails with teaching English quite nicely. And let's start looking at that. Let's talk about the power of the English language and why people are learning English. This is a massive infographic that probably is too small on your screen to fully appreciate the scope of. But here's a tip, if you go into Google at another time, not now, come on, listen to me. You can tell I work with undergrads sometimes, right? Wait, get your devices out later. A world of languages, if you put that phrase into Google with infographic, then you can take your time and really look through this. This is fascinating information about where the world's languages are and what they are. I'm going to direct your attention to the fact that these are just 23 of the world's languages. These are the top 23 languages spoken in the world. And what you'll see is there's this sort of, here's English, and each little bubble inside there is a country where it's spoken, and the number of people in that country that speak that language as their first language. So you can see Japanese doesn't have a lot of bubbles in it because it's not a pluricentric language. That is, it's not spoken in multiple countries. But you can see English is a fairly pluricentric language. Look how pluricentric Spanish is. All those different countries represented there. It's even color-coded by which continent those countries are. So that's a lot of fun to look at. But what I want to draw your attention to is the tiniest part of this. Sorry, it's so small, but you can still kind of get an idea. Look at this circle right here. So the big circle on the outside is a representation of the 7.2 billion people on Earth. 7.2 billion people. And if you look right here, this circle right here is 4.1 billion people. And that is who is represented in this big bubble. 4.1 billion people on our Earth speak one of these 23 languages. So if we're looking at this circle and how much this 23 languages takes up of that circle, take a guess as to how many languages there are spoken in the world. Did you guess 6,000? Whoa! 6,000. So what does that mean? It means that in this little crescent right here are the other 5,900 and something, I'm not doing math in my head while I'm speaking, languages. Oh man, there's a lot of really, really small languages in the world. And here's more information. In this century, the century that we are already 20 years into, of those 6,000 languages spoken in the world, half of them will be extinct by the end of this century. We are losing, in the scope of this century, half of the world's spoken languages. English is a language of immense power. So are all of these 23 languages, and some of the ways that we teach English are part of that problem, but also that's a much bigger picture. It's looking at mass communication, mass transportation, globalization, economic factors. All of that is tying into what's killing off some of the world's languages. As a linguist, obviously, that is upsetting to me, but also as a Christian, because I think when we look at the way that culture and language are interrelated, when we think about God's heart for diversity and the way that God expresses the fact that every tribe and tongue will praise him in the end, to me it's somewhat tragic that some powerful languages are overtaking some of the weaker languages. It also means that there are some elderly speakers of languages out there who have no one left to share their heart language with. It's really, really unfortunate. So wait a minute, am I now telling you not to teach English because we're killing the world's languages? I don't want to confuse anyone out there. It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. Remember that humble readiness piece of being a servant? In humility, we want to teach and serve. And we want to do it in a way that doesn't override someone else's culture, but adds to someone's culture, that doesn't overtake someone's language, but adds to their linguistic repertoire. And there are important distinctions in the way that we do that that represent Christ better than erasing someone's language and culture. So, also, as I'm looking at this graphic, I'm wondering if maybe I should be teaching Chinese instead of English, which would be great. I'd love to learn Chinese. I'd have to learn it first before I could teach it. But Chinese is definitely a big language here. But take a look at the other infographic I have. These are language learners. People who are studying languages in the world today. I've actually seen, this is a little bit dated, I've actually seen statistics that put this as high as 2 billion learners. English is by far the most common studied foreign language in the world. And there are lots of reasons for that. This is exciting for me as an English teacher because it's a little bit like job security, but also as someone who cares about missions, look at the opportunity. You can be an English teacher and have access to an audience of 2 billion people or 1.5 billion people, somewhere between that. That's a lot of people you're getting access to. That includes refugee populations, that includes business professionals, that includes academics, that includes international students, and children and everyone in between. This bubble is made of so many people. Why? Because English is one of the official languages of over 67 countries in the world. And if you look at urban centers where English is widely spoken but not recognized as an official language, that number goes even higher. I also like to point out that English is not the official language of the United States, so we're actually not one of those 67. We've never named an official language. We're weird that way. So there's lots of places besides those 67 where English is an everyday language. Also, think about that big circle of 4.1 billion people speaking those 23 languages, and yet 54% of all websites are in English. 54% of the World Wide Web, think of how influential that is in English. And this is actually an infographic showing that the very next language on the list is only at 6%. So I totally take that for granted when I go online, that I'm going to find stuff in English. Totally take it for granted. But imagine if you're an English language learner trying to access information in any discipline, whether that's global development, engineering, trying to get clean water for your village, and all that information, all that scientific research has been done in one language. Also, we want to recognize that English proficiency is often used as a gatekeeper tool. And I don't have to like this to acknowledge it, it just is. And it's an important piece of the picture. It's often used as a gatekeeping tool for earning degrees, getting certificates, getting jobs or promotions around the world. So there is a real felt need to learn English and to be proficient in English. Part of the reason that teaching English is multicultural servanthood is because of the great need people actually have to learn English. More than 50% of the world's technical and scientific periodicals are in English as well. So it hits all kinds of different disciplines. It hits all kinds of areas of development work around the world. I have one other story I like to share. If you've heard me speak before, I'm sorry. I share this story a lot, and it might be a repeat, but I love it because it's about middle schoolers. And I just love any story that starts with middle schoolers. Put your middle school worldview on for a second and remember what you thought of the world when you were a middle schooler. So this secular sociologist researcher goes into Pakistan, and he's interviewing Pakistani middle school students to get their perspective on what should be done, what could be done to help Afghani refugee children in their communities. And a lot of the answers are things you would totally expect. They need food, they need medicine, they need shelter, they need English lessons, English lessons? How did English lessons get on the short list of basic needs? So the sociologist saw that answer come up so often that he went back and did a follow-up survey to find out why English lessons specifically made this short list of basic needs for helping Afghani refugee children. And what these Pakistani middle school kids said over and over again really fell into two major themes. One theme was they would have better opportunities for employment and for getting out of the camps and the situations that they're in if they would learn English. But the second answer just really grabs my heart. What these middle school students, Pakistani middle school students, said is that the world's resources are held by English speakers. And if these Afghani refugee children want access to the world's resources, they need to get their story out in English. We need to hear what they have to say in order to give them a share of our resources. Right? English is a powerful language. That is the perspective middle schoolers have of the role that English plays in our world today. It's not a pretty picture to look at. It's a difficult one, and I acknowledge that. I'm not glad it's that way. I'm not celebrating that, even as an English teacher, even as someone who enjoys teaching English. I don't love all the reasons that English has the power it has in the world today. But I need to be aware of that when I step into a classroom. If I'm going to do it as multicultural servanthood, if I'm going to do it with a posture of humility, I better understand some of the tensions that exist while teaching a language of immense power, while at the same time representing a gospel that is rooted in humility. There's some tension to be worked out there, and I can serve my students best when I have my eyes open to that tension. It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it, right? And it matters so much. So we want to teach English as multicultural servants who represent that gospel rooted in humility well. And we want to take advantage of that audience of 1.5 billion, maybe 2 billion people. But we want to do it from a posture of humility, a posture that says, want to add to your linguistic repertoire and not supplant it. Donald Snow has this fabulous book, and if my students were in here right now, they'd all be laughing because they all say that I constantly try to pitch books to them to go read, and I do, and that's my thing, and I'm sorry. I'm going to pitch a book to you. If you love this topic, go read Donald Snow's book, Teaching English as Christian Mission. It is the best starting place I could possibly point you to, other than coming and having coffee with me sometime, which I hope I get to do with some of you. But he writes in his book that there is a need for Christians to love God with their minds as well as their hearts. If we are going to teach English or do anything else as service to God, it seems only right that we should give the matter deep and prayerful thought. The quality, I'm going to emphasize quality, with which Christian English teachers carry out their teaching work is a vitally important part of their Christian witness. Rather than being incidental to witness or even evangelism, the quality of Christian English teachers' teaching work is the primary vehicle through which they share the love of God with their students, and also the strongest and clearest statement that they make about what a Christian should be like. I firmly agree with Donald Snow here. One of the ways that we love God and that we approach our vocation, we approach servanthood, is to do what we do really well, to serve our students well. And we want to serve our students in a way that gives them success. So here we go. Serving for success. Many people set out to learn a second language and stop short of their acquisition goals. Is this true? Yes. Let's see. It's January the 16th. How are your New Year's resolutions going? Oh, that was a really unfair question. I'm sorry. I shouldn't ask. But learning a language is one of those like New Year's resolution type goals, right? And a lot of people set out to try to learn another language and quit. I'm going to be honest, it's hard. It takes a long time. We spin our wheels a lot doing the kinds of things that don't really help us get from point A to point B. We spend a lot of time and energy on point A and we're still in point A. It's discouraging. There's a lot of work here that happens that doesn't help learners at all get to where they need to be. So how do we help our students succeed? If this is a real need that students really have, they really need to learn English, how do we help them succeed? What are we supposed to do to help them get through language learning and actually reach their goals? Well, there's a lot to say about that. There's a whole degree program in it. But if I could sink it down into 3 things, it would be this: encounter, review, and use. We want to help students encounter the language, review it, and use it. That's the way the brain works. So hold these 3 words in your brain for a second. I'm going to stop share because you've been looking at PowerPoint for a long time. You've been in Zoom a long time. And we're going to exit. But hold those words in your head: encounter, review, use. Okay. Oop, I'm large again. Encounter, review, and use. This is the cycle of acquisition, and things get lost in this cycle if we don't execute the cycle really well. So think about it this way. How many of you have learned high school French, German, Spanish and can't meaningfully use French, German, Spanish? Okay. Ouch, that hurt a little bit as a confession because my mother's a Spanish teacher and she taught high school Spanish. So no barbs against like high school language teachers. You're doing a great job. It's just a rough gig, okay? Encounter is where a lot of us start and stop, and that's part of the problem. How many of you took those vocab quizzes and you did great, you memorized your words, and then they were gone? And then you took another vocab quiz, you learned them, and then gone, right? Part of the reason for that is that you encode, you encounter a word, that's when you learn it, or you learn a structure, like a grammar feature or a vocabulary word, and then you have to maintain it over time. We've always known this to be true in second language acquisition studies. It's not duration. It's not sitting down and cramming it for an hour. It's studying it for 5 minutes today, and then tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day. Or actually spacing out those reviews. So studying it again after an hour, after 2 hours, after 5 hours, after a day, after a week, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, and seeing it over and over in a spaced interval. That's how you maintain it. You review it over and over a long period of time, as much as 6 months. Having to see the word at a spaced repetition is what keeps it in your long-term memory. But let me go back to that first bubble again, encounter. When you encounter something, you might remember it and you might forget it. Those are your options. There are a lot of things we encounter in a day that we forget. Hopefully not this particular session or what I'm saying right now, but well, I am aware of how the brain works. So maybe you're writing it down and you're going to process this with someone later to review it. But the idea here is that I need to see it over time. I need to, in order to encode it well, it has to be novel. It has to be something interesting or different or unusual, something that hasn't quite been the way I'm used to seeing it. This impacts the classroom, right? I have to do things in a new and novel way, in a weird and interesting way, each time I present something, because routine and boringness won't encode, right? Scientists have said we probably have about 4 slots in our working memory at any given time. That is, we can take in 4 things in our short-term memory and hold them there and have them ready to use or apply. If we maintain that, if something's unusual in there, it's more likely to stick. One of the reasons it's more likely to stick is because we're likely to tell somebody about it. And that's one way to maintain it. That's one way to review it. So we want to have really splashy, glittery, spontaneous, weird ways to give our students language that's memorable, that makes it one of those 4 things. Remember that at any given time, one of those 4 things might be I'm tired, and one of them might be I'm hungry. So you might only be operating on 2 things at once, but only 4 things at a time. So let's apply that to the way a language textbook is written, and it gives you 20 vocabulary words to go memorize. How many can you encode at a time? What if I'm really motivated? What if I really want to learn the whole list? You can't change your working memory. It still operates on 4. So as we're teaching lessons, we want to keep that in mind, that as we teach really new things, Keep it concise, keep it really small, and then review it over time. Also, I'm looking at a language textbook and saying, here's the vocabulary, and it's sort of in this unit and contained in this unit, and then the next unit, I can't just open a new box and leave all that stuff behind. I have to thread all that stuff all the way through when I'm teaching so that I'm maintaining it. Now, can you remember your 3 words still? Hopefully. Because it's less than 4. We had that circle that said encounter, maintain, or review, and apply. Apply. We have to use it. You've definitely heard this said before. Use it or lose it. Yes, I see heads nodding. Thank you. It really helps not being in the room. It really helps to see your reactions. Yeah, that checks out. Research backs that up all the way. Use it or lose it. We have to practice it. We have to actually use it with our words. We have to write it down. We have to produce it in automatic speech. One of the things that happens with language is that you'll have students who have a lot of paper knowledge. Paper language learners, I call them. And they've studied a lot and they memorized a lot of stuff, but they can't use it with automaticity because they never got to that place, or they were too afraid, or it wasn't safe, or they thought they were going to make a mistake. Let your learners make all kinds of mistakes. Mistakes are the vegetables of language learning. You don't like them, but they're good for you. They're so good for you to make some mistakes. So make lots of mistakes, but apply. Keep using what you've learned. And that's how we become successful. Okay, so that's how we serve for success. I'm going to go back to sharing our screen again. Sorry, I know you've seen a lot of PowerPoints today. This is not necessarily super novel, but here we go. Next step is serving for hope. My actual real middle name is Hope. But I love the concept that teaching is life-giving when it's teaching that is embedded in hope. We need to give our students hope. Students know. They know learning a language is not always a successful venture. They are familiar with the pitfalls. They're not sure they can do it. They don't necessarily have a lot of confidence coming into the classroom. Students have a lot of beliefs and expectations about learning a language. They have internal monologues that are telling them all kinds of harmful things like, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough to learn a language. Maybe I'm too old to learn, or I'm the only one who doesn't understand my teacher. That's never true. There's always lots of people who don't understand me. Or the teacher's always doing weird things. And we'll never learn this stuff if she doesn't show me what I'm supposed to memorize. Oh yeah, teaching is a culture. And I might come with all my research-based weird toolbox tricks. But if that's not what my students are expecting success to look like, that's not what they're expecting language learning to look like, I need to address that. Because inside their head, there's a lot being said that can actually derail the success I want to give them. And it can turn them away from what I'm doing. And if they drop out or give up, I can't serve them. And I've lost my opportunity to do all the good work that comes next. So I want to make sure my students understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I want to address the monologue. And I need to have some research, some footing to do that with, right? I want to have some facts. But no, actually, there's a myth that says children are better language learners than grown-ups. And I know why, and I can explain that because I won't get into that because that's a different rabbit trail. But when we have coffee, we'll talk about it. To serve students really well, we need to know what their beliefs are about learning a language, and we need to work with them and help them to develop strategies that prove that they can learn. Maybe we want to not just teach English, not just teach the language, but teach hope. Teach some direct strategies. Teach some indirect strategies. Teach them how to go about learning a language and what will give them fruit. One of the things I have my learners do is chant with me. English is difficult, but English is possible. Because English is such a hot mess of a language. We are rebels, and our language tells us we are because we break rules all the time in English. And it is hard. It's so hard. English is difficult, but English is possible. If I can just get them to chant that and believe it and realize that other people have learned this language successfully and they can be one of them, I can give them a lot of hope. All right. I'm going to move on because I want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. But ultimately, so we're serving for success, we're serving for hope, and ultimately we are serving for Christ. Again, I'm quoting Donald Snow. Students taught by Christian English teachers all come into the English classroom with needs that go way beyond problems with English grammar. And one important way that Christian English teachers can live out God's love is by being aware of their students' needs and viewing English teaching as an opportunity to minister to those needs. Oh, I absolutely love this piece of teaching. I love coming early to class and having my students already there, ready to hang out and talk. Staying late. Sometimes it's been giving students a ride home from school, if that's been appropriate in context, and just chatting with them. Sitting in the parking lot outside their apartment complex in my car, even past midnight, hearing what's really going on in life and listening to that and being present for that, knowing what their needs are. And sometimes the need is just somebody to listen, somebody to pray for them, somebody to minister to them. And when you have spent hours and hours talking and laughing and being goofy, sometimes, yes, you earn a trust. You earn a foundational place in somebody's life, and you get to be the person that they come to when they really need something. And I love the way that doing something as simple as showing up and teaching be verbs has allowed me that place, that privileged place to hold story, to hold my students' story, and to find out what those needs are and to serve them well. Teaching English puts you in people's lives. And if you are deeply committed to meeting their language needs and deeply prayerful about opportunities to share the gospel, you can absolutely trust God to give you those opportunities. Move slowly, though. Listen a lot. Add to your own culture. Students notice that. Serve, and He will give you those opportunities. Yeah. At Multnomah, a lot of times people come to me and ask about the TESOL program, and they've had history classes and math classes and science classes, but they've never had a TESOL class, and they have no idea what it is we do. And I understand that. What is it you're supposed to learn in order to be a good language teacher? That's a great question. I'm going to outline what we do so that you can either come connect to what we're doing or go find resources in these sort of themes on your own. But TESOL basically is the study of linguistic knowledge, just understanding all the patterns and processes of what language is. It's pedagogical skill. How do you communicate those patterns to language learners, especially if you don't have the same first language? Cultural competency, because education is a culture and language and culture are connected. There's a lot of cultural responsiveness pieces to it. It's professional development, learning how to access resources, network, and grow professionally. And spiritual formation. How do you connect who you are in Christ with who you are in the classroom? And we have lots of opportunities for ways to do that. From certificate programs, we have undergrad programs, master's programs. We even have an ESOL ministry workshop that we do every year. We're not doing it this year because we're a little spent on the rewiring we've done for COVID in all of our classes. But next February, we'll be doing our ESL ministry workshop. That's just a one-day workshop to come and get some tools and training and things like that. So go learn as much as you possibly can and serve students well. I'm going to turn it over to some questions and answers right now and see if Michael has any questions that have come up in the chat while I've been talking your ear off.
I have not seen any questions come up
Okay.
that, but let's unmute everyone. Okay. And we'll see. Whoops. Sorry. Trying to get everybody unmuted here. Let's just do this. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Great. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, if anybody has a question for me or has something, feel free to either type it in the chat or ask it out loud by unmuting yourself.
So Tony has a question. Do your programs involve direct experience in teaching?
Yes, they do. So we have probably the coolest thing going on is our community ESOL program here at Multnomah University. So students in our TESOL programs get to do practicum and internship teaching experiences through free English classes we offer to the community. Right now, we have 90 English language learners enrolled in our free community English program. We have started this program in 2008, and we've had 1,100 students from 70 different language backgrounds come to Multnomah or on Zoom, now that we're doing it remotely, all that rewiring we're doing. And they come for 2 hours on Wednesday evenings, and they do English classes right here on our campus, or in Zoom right now. Our TESOL students who have been in classes and learned how to teach English actually have the opportunity to practice what they've learned. Now, that's one way they can do it. We also have students who are passionate about maybe someone was passionate about working with refugees in Lebanon. Someone was passionate about university students in Cairo. Someone was passionate about middle schoolers in Mexico. And you can actually do your internship or practicum requirement from anywhere in the world that you have an internet connection. And you get the mentoring and coaching from Multnomah professors while you're teaching in your context that you're passionate about. So we've had people volunteer in schools and churches in the area as well as all over the world.
Great. Here's a question from Linda. Do church communities, international church communities, do they contact you to request ESL teachers because they recognize the outreach potential for their church?
Yes, all the time. I kind of jokingly say I could place 10 teachers for every graduate I have of this program. The harvest is plenty and the workers are few is definitely something that comes from my mouth all the time. I have missions organizations and international churches contact me all the time saying, we need a teacher. Just this week, a seminary in Egypt contacted me, and they're looking for a teacher to come teach theological English because in order to get a seminary degree, the seminarians need to study English. There are all kinds of opportunities around the world for English teachers to go serve, and definitely there's a more and more acknowledgement that they want teachers who are trained and how to do it because they want that success piece and they want that foundation of trust that comes from serving them well.
Can I add something to that? I always challenge my students at Multnomah. I say, if you just go online and type in any country, Cuba, North Korea, Afghanistan, I don't care what country it is, type in the name of the country and TESOL jobs, and you can't find something, I'll take you to lunch. I've never had anybody, I've never had that problem. Yeah. And can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Um, there's a seminary in Nigeria right now, and Nigeria was a British colony, and so the national language of business and government and education is English, of course. And but they're finding, and I think this is true in a lot of former British colonies, they're finding that the further away they get from the colonial period, the less English there actually is in the country. Um, and so there's this huge need in Nigeria for EFL, or I don't know if you want to call it EFL or ESL teachers, but anyway, English teachers to kind of bump up the English that's already there. And especially one seminary in Nigeria is asking for English teachers.
Yeah, I see Pat asked the question, does MU TESOL offer or require short-term experience teaching outside the US? Yes, when there's not a global pandemic, obviously. We unfortunately had to cancel our 2020 trip, but we go every other year to Japan as a team. It's optional, it's not required, but it can fulfill a practicum experience requirement. And what we do is there is a church run by a Japanese pastor. It's all local run. And he teaches English classes year round. And we go do an English camp for his ministry so he can spread his net a little wider and invite both the people he's been serving and some new people, bring them in. And we do a week-long camp, English Bible camp for him. He does the worship services and we do the English teaching and we work together. And it's just an amazing opportunity to see how English teaching and mission and local church come together. And it's an experience that we just love doing. And the question is, does the internship part of the certificate? Yes. So to get there's two certificate programs at MU. One of them is just the foundation certificate, and it's one class. It's one 3-credit class. Or there's the advanced certificate, which is 5 classes and the internship. So once you've done all 5 courses, you can do the internship, and you can do it either with our community ESL program, with our Japan trip, or anywhere in the world with an internet connection. We are at time, but if anybody else has a question, I'm going to put my email address into the chat while I talk, which is a feat of multitasking. There we go. I'm also going to put a web page up that is part of our community ESOL website. But if you scroll down past our schedule for community ESL, there are links to all the different TESOL programs that we have at MU. So that includes both of our certificate programs, our undergrad and our master's programs, and a dual degree program that we offer in global development and justice and TESOL. So explore some more, contact me. Seriously, I love getting coffee and talking TESOL, and I can sip coffee over Zoom as well, really well now. So reach out to me, and I'd love to hear more of your TESOL story. Oh, I'm sorry. I sent all of that privately to Michael instead of actually sharing it with the whole group. That's where that multitasking starts to
That's
break
okay.
down. Here's the things that I said I will share with the whole group. Now they're actually shared. So there's my email address. It's Kidney. Kidney, yes, like the body part. Nice and easy to remember. Kidney@multnomah.edu. Connect with me. I'd love to hear more of your story. And we're at time, so I'm happy to hang out longer if you want to chat, but I think we're going to wrap up the session and let you head on to your next thing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kristen. Right. Please make sure to fill out that survey if you haven't already. All right. Okay. And let's see.
Oh, I
Okay.
see a question from Linda
Oh, yeah.
about elementary education. Yeah, that would definitely be recognized as a certificate and have lots of opportunities globally to use that training for sure. I also taught elementary ESL and have my K-12 ESL license. I taught in Tennessee, so certification was a little bit different than it is in Oregon and Washington. But yeah, definitely around the world there are places where that would be a credential you could use. Hope that answers your question.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
I think
Good. Yep.
ready. Thank you so much.
Yay.
I
Thank
think
you,
it went
Kristen.
well. We had a big
Yes.
group. So they
Yeah.
filled out the Google form, is that right?
I hope so.
Okay. The ones that did will hopefully get their
Yeah.
information from.
Yeah. Who is MUT-SOL?
That's me
Oh, that's you on another.
on another device because
Good
I
idea.
always forget that you can't what I see when I'm the host isn't what they see. So I logged in on a second device
Okay.
just to remind myself to do the things that I need to do. I tend to log in twice every time I use Zoom just because of that particular feature.
Wow.
That way I remember, oh yeah, you need to hit side by side because I haven't done it yet either. Yeah, those things. Well,
Good.
thank you so much. I think it went
Oh, yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. We
It's,
had 15, 16, 17 participants the whole time, so that's great. I took a few screenshots and I don't know how other people do it, but I just paste them into a Word document. It's kind of
mhm.
clunky, but that's easy, I guess.
Yeah,
So I can
that'd
send
be
that to you.
that would be great. I can put it on our social media page and share that we did a thing.
Yeah.
I'm probably making weird faces. I found that when people I don't think I'm that animated, but when I'm really into something or I'm trying to like break the after lunch lull, I'm sure I'm making like all kinds of weird faces. They did
Well,
a trailer for the MU Plus 30-day challenge,
oh yeah.
and they used a little snippet of me, and I'm making the weirdest face. But I'm like, I don't think they could probably find a segment of my video where I wasn't. I think that's probably the best they could find. Oh, fun times.
Oh, oh,
All
yeah.
right. Well,
Well,
thank you so
great.
much. I hope you have a
Oh,
great rest of your weekend.
you too. You too. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Take care.